Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, in today's lesson, we were doing our grade 3 English lesson on subject and predicate. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 3. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of subject and predicate. All right. So our chapter is subject and predicate. Our chapter is subject and predicate. Our subject is English Language Arts, grade 3. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of subject and predicate is to identify the complete subject of the sentence and to identify the complete predicate of the sentence. And if we are going to go over what the subject is of the sentence, firstly, right? So, subject of the sentence, right, is firstly every sentence. So, every sentence, they have a complete subject and they also have a complete predicate. So, every sentence has a complete subject and they have a complete predicate. And the complete subject, right, of any sentence will tell you who or what is doing something. So it will tell us who or what is doing something. It can either be one word or it can be more than one word. So complete subject, it tells us either who is doing something or it tells us what is doing something, right? And our subject can either be one word or it can be more than one word. For example, she sleeps a lot, right? So now we need to ask ourselves who is doing something. So who is doing something? And then we can say it is, then we say she sleeps a lot, which means that our subject within that sentence is she. And if we look at the next sentence, it says her friend sleeps a lot. And remember, we said that a complete subject, it tells us either who or what is doing something and can either be one word or it can be more than one word. And in this case, we are saying her friend sleeps a lot. So now you need to ask yourself who sleeps a lot. So we can then say her friend sleeps a lot. So now that is now more than one word that is being identified as the subject that tells us who or what is doing something. And then our next sentence says her best friend sleeps a lot, right? Which means that her best friend is our subject, and that tells us who is doing something, right? Which means that her best friend is doing something. So that is basically our subject, and it is also more than one word that we have identified. So if we look at all three of these sentences, right? The first one says she sleeps a lot, and we identified she as being our subject. Her best friend sleeps a lot, and we identified her friend that sleeps a lot. And we identified the next one, her best friend, as a subject because her best friend sleeps a lot. And each one of these sentences, right, with each complete subject, it tells us who sleeps a lot. So yet she sleeps a lot, her best friend sleeps a lot, as well as, yeah, her friend sleeps a lot and her best friend sleeps a lot. So a complete subject, it tells us either who is doing something or tells us what is doing something, right? And we see that our complete subject can either be one word or it can be more than one word. All right, so then we also have a predicate, right? Like our chapter, it says subject and predicate. So we went over the subject now, and we said a subject, it tells us either who or what is doing something. Then we also have a predicate, and every sentence it has a complete subject, and we say that it has a complete predicate. Right? So each subject as or each sentence has a complete subject and it has a complete predicate. And a complete predicate, right? It tells us either what the subject is doing. The subject is either the person or the thing that is doing something. But now the complete predicate, right? It will tell us what the subject is doing. It tells us the action that the subject is doing. And when it comes to the complete predicate, right? The predicate, it is the verb plus any other words that tell us more about it. And also, it can be one word or it can be more than one word. And if we look at our few sentences, right, it says her friend sleeps. So, what is her friend doing? She sleeps, right? And then it also says, the second one says, her friend sleeps a lot. And if we were to identify the predicate within that sentence and basically identify what the subject is doing, then within that sentence we can say her friend sleeps a lot, which means that sleeps a lot is our predicate, which means that it is now more than one word. That tells us what the subject is doing. And then we have another sentence that says her friend sleeps a lot on the weekend. And then we can, if we were to identify the complete predicate that tells us what the subject is doing, then we can say the subject sleeps a lot on the weekend. So once again, we see that the complete predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. So it is the verb, which is sleeps. There's the verb, plus any other words that tells us more about what the subject is doing. And we have noticed that it is either one word or it is more than one word. And if we look at all three of these sentences, right, and then each one of these completed predicates, right, it tells us what her friend does. The friend sleeps, the friend sleeps a lot, or the friend sleeps a lot on the weekend. So once again, before we move on, right, we say that each sentence has a complete subject and each sentence has a complete predicate, right? And the complete subject within a sentence, it tells us either who or it tells us what is doing something. And a when it comes to a subject, right, then it can either be one word or it can be more than one word. And then we also have a complete predicate, right, within a sentence. And the complete predicate within a sentence, it tells us what the subject is doing. It's the action that the subject is doing, it's the action that the person or thing is doing. And with a completed predicate, right, it is the verb plus it is any other words that tells us more about it. So it is the verb plus any other word that tells us more about the action that is being done. And it can also only be one word or it can be more than one word. Guys, can we just stop talking please for once? Can we all stop having conversations? Can we just listen to whatever that is being told? We are doing subjects and predicates. Every week we come when I log on, and then it's always the grade threes that immediately starts having their own conversations. So can everybody just stop having their own conversations if this is going to happen again in our next lesson, and then I'm going to let your parents sit in with you when I am busy teaching. So let us just respect the others that are here and that is willing to learn and to listen. Please. All right, so let us go to a+students.ca, and we are now going to complete our tutorial lesson on a+students.ca under subjects and predicate, and then we're also going to do our test. So we're now going to identify the complete subject of a sentence. And we said a complete subject, or before we complete the complete subject, right? We said with each sentence, right? Each sentence needs to have a subject and each sentence needs to have a predicate, right? And a predicate is basically a verb and every other word that tells us what the person or thing is doing, right? And a subject, firstly, right? A completed subject, it tells us either who or it tells us what is doing something within a sentence. So you can either identify a person that is doing something, or you can identify a thing that is doing something, or even an animal that is doing something within that sentence. And when we identify a complete subject, then a complete subject can either be one word or it can be more than one word. And we made a few examples of she sleeps, right? And if you look at the words in bold, if we look at the words in bold, these are our subjects, right? Which is she sleeps a lot. So the word she, right? It tells us who is doing something. Then we have her friend sleeps a lot. Another thing where we say this one tells us who is doing something. And then we have her best friend sleeps a lot. Also tells us who is doing something. So the words in bold, it tells us who is doing something or what is doing something. And we said it can either be one word or it can be more than one word that makes up a complete subject. Yes, her best friend is correct. All right. So now it says, right? We need to select one word that makes up a complete sentence. It says Dalton sold his bike. And remember we said that a subject it tells us who is doing something. So who or what is doing something. And if we look at this specific sentence, it says Dalton sold his bike. So Dalton sold his bike. What is the subject within that sentence that tells us who is doing something? So, what is the subject that we can identify within that sentence? It says Dalton sold his bike. What is the subject within that sentence? Yes, and if we were to identify what the subject is within the sentence, right, that tells us who or what is doing something, and then we can say it is Dalton. So Dalton is our subject because it tells us what Dalton did, right? And what did Dalton do? Dalton sold his bike. So who sold his bike? Dalton did. So Dalton is our subject within that sentence. All right, so Dalton is correct. Now it says sailors respect their captain. Sailors respect their captain. We need to select one word that makes up the complete subject. Sailors respect their captain. What is the subject that tells us who or what is doing something within that sentence? It says sailors respect their captain. All right, and if we look at the sentence, right, it says sailors respect their captain. What is the subject within that sentence that tells us either who is doing something or what is doing something? All right, so we can say sailors is our subject, right? Because they respect their captain. Yes, well done. Sailors is correct because sailors, it tells us either who or it tells us what is doing something. So sailors, they are our subject within that sentence. So well done. All right, the last one. It says select two words that make up the complete subject. We need to select two words that make up the complete subject. It says our dog senses danger. Our dog senses danger. So our dog senses danger. And if we were to select the subject within that sentence, right? All right. So if we were to select the subject within that sentence, it tells us either who or what is doing something. And then we can say our dog, which means that they said we need to select two words. So it's our dog that senses danger. And that is basically our subjects that we have identified within our sentences. And once again, we said every sentence has a complete subject and every sentence has a complete predicate. And our complete subject, it either tells us who is doing something or tells us what is doing something. And it can either only be one word or it can be more than one word, right? So now let's go to our test. And now we need to select one word that makes up the complete subject. It says mice squeaked softly. Mice squeaked softly. What is the subject within the sentence? Is it mice or is it softly? So we need to select the subject within that sentence. It says mice squeaked softly. So what is the subject within that sentence? Is it mice or is it softly? All right, yes, and if we were to select the correct answer, right, or the correct subject, and then mice is correct because the mice is our subject within that sentence. The brown horse escaped. We need to select the subject within that sentence. The brown horse escaped. So we need to select three words that make up a complete sentence. Three words within the sentence. Is it the brown horse escaped? Or let's say the sentence is the brown horse escaped. So we need to select the three words. Is it the brown horse or is it brown horse escaped? What is our subject within our sentence? Within our sentence. All right. So if we were to select our three words, right, that make up a complete sentence. All right. So we can then say the brown horse, and that is our subject, right, within the sentence of the brown horse escaped. So well done. We now need to select two words that make up the complete subject. Two words. It says Scott's dad chopped the wood. Scott's dad chopped the wood. So we need to select the two words that make up a complete subject. Is it Scott's dad or is it the wood? So we need to select the two words that tells us either who or what is doing something. Is it Scott's dad that is doing something or is it the woods that is doing something? Yes, and if we were to select the subject, then we would say it is Scott's dad. So well done. Guys, I'm once again going to say again, I'm going to report all of you now. I'm going to do that. Let me just make contact now. Or I'm going to press on your name and then I will report you like that. Because I can literally report you or I can remove you. Can we just all respect one another and just listen? We are almost done. We literally have 10 more minutes left. If you don't want to be here, then don't log on because there's others that want to be part of the program. Please don't disrespect me by saying mama or ma. I am either Miss Nadine or I'm just Nadine. All right, so now we need to select two words that make up the complete subject, which is it says our neighbor fed the dog. Is it our neighbor that tells us either who or what is doing something, or is it the dog? Ma is like saying mother. So select the two words that make up the complete subject. Is it our neighbor or is it the dog? So who did the action? And in this case, we can say it is our neighbor because what did our neighbor do? Our neighbor fed the dog. All right, milk spoils too easily. Milk spoils too easily. We need to select the one word that make up the complete subject. Is it milk or is it spoils? So is it milk or spoils? It says milk spoils too easily. Remember, we are identifying the subject. We are identifying someone or something that did the action. Remember, spoils is a verb. So spoils is a verb, so it cannot be spoiled. And if we were to identify our subject, and then it would be milk. Because what spoils easily? Milk spoils easily, right? So that was a subject, right? And the subject we said it tells us either someone or something that did something, So now we're going to a predicate. We're going to identify the complete predicate. And we said with the complete predicate, a predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. And with the predicate, it is the verb plus any other words that tells us more about it. It can also, once again, be one word or it can be more than one word. So now we're going to be identifying the predicate is basically the verb, right? The action. And all the other words, it tells us about the action. For example, here it says Laura slept all day, right? So what did Laura do? She slept all day, right? And that is an example of our predicate. Let's go to our test. All right, we need to select three words that make up a complete predicate. It says honeybees sting people sometimes. Honeybees sting people sometimes. We need to select the three words that make up a complete predicate. Is it sting people sometimes or is it honeybees? So we can say honeybees, they sting people sometimes. And the action, right? The verb within that sentence is sting. But now they say we must select three words, right? Which means that it's going to be sting people sometimes. Remember, we said that the predicate is either one word or it can be more than one word, right? So which means that we take the verb plus all the other words it comes after the verb. So it will be, for example, the verb plus any other words that comes after the verb. So here, once again, they say we need to select three words that make up a complete predicate. It says the diner serves French fries. So the diner serves French fries. All right, so we can say the diner serves French fries. Yes, and if we were to select our predicate, they said it's three words. Remember, I said we start by the verb, the actual verb, and then all the other words it comes after that verb. So if we must select three words that make up a complete predicate, and then it will be serves French fries because it's the verb, right? Plus any other words that comes after the verb. So serve French fries is correct. So well done. All right. So it says the farmer gathered the ducks, right? And if you were to identify the predicate, which is the verb within that sentence, right? Then first identify the verb and then all the other words that comes after the verb, right? Then you know that all of that words is our predicate. All right. So if we were to identify, then yes, we will choose the second option, which is gathered the ducks. So gathered being our verb, and then the ducks, which tells us even more about the verb. All right, one more, and then we are done for the day. It says that woman taught maths. We need to select two words that make up a complete sentence, a complete predicate. That woman, that woman taught maths. All right, so if we were to select out two words, then we can say taught math, right? Because taught is our verb. And what did we teach? Math, taught math, right? All right, so that is our lesson on subject and predicate. We said that every sentence or every completed sentence has a subject and it has a predicate, right? All right, so we say that we have a complete predicate and we have a complete subject, right? And each sentence, it requires of you to have a subject as well as a predicate, right? And we say that a subject, it tells us either who or what is doing something. And we say the predicate, it tells us the action that the person or thing is doing. All right, but that is now the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade threes, for joining the class and for interacting. And you should have a good evening further. Goodbye.